Welcome to my review for Howl, a British horror film from 2015. Now, I'd never heard of this until just a few nights ago when I was randomly cycling through some horror Blu-rays on eBay, and I spotted this very interesting front cover to a film I'd not heard of. I decided to type the name of it into Amazon Prime to see if it was available for rent, and it turns out it was actually available for free, which was nice. So I put it on and I enjoyed it so much, I thought to myself, I've got to do a review of it. This fits into one of my favourite subgenres of horror, this film, which is what I like to call train terror. If you've followed my channel a lot, you'll probably know that I like horror films on trains. There's also werewolves in this film. Yeah, it's about werewolves on a train, or werewolves in and around a train. So I think most people would probably call it a werewolf film rather than a train terror film, but I'm just weird in some ways, I guess. So the story for this in more detail sees this train conductor guy going on the last journey of his working day. He works out of Waterloo Station in London, and on this particular journey, he's going from Waterloo to a place called Eastborough, which is near a town called Maidstone in Kent. So if you picture London on a British map, Maidstone is sort of south of London, down in the kind of south east corner, sort of. It's about 40 miles, 45 miles. Now this journey gets to within about 3 or 4 miles of its destination, and then the train hits a deer. The train doesn't get derailed, but the fuel lines underneath the train get cut during the collision, so the train can no longer move. It's stranded on the tracks. And either side of this particular stretch of tracks are just really thick woodland where there just happens to live this really hungry pack of werewolves. Now, I think we're sort of led to believe that normally trains wouldn't stop at this part of the line, which is why the werewolves have gone undiscovered up until now, and presumably it just happens to be a full moon, so it's the perfect storm in a teacup. As a British person, I can say I've regularly been on the type of train journey that you see in this film. You know, 10, 11 o'clock at night, possibly it's the last train on the schedule. Nobody's pushing the confectionery trolley through the carriages anymore because it's so late. You look out the window and it just looks dead for miles. There's no lights out there. It looks like the edge of the world. It's really desolate inside the carriages as well. There's maybe just a few people covering several carriages. It feels very eerie when you're in that situation, on that kind of journey. So when this film starts, I thought it was dripping with atmosphere long before it even got to the crash site. But once it does, the tension just rises tenfold because the characters quickly figure out what the danger is outside. This isn't one of those films where everybody gets picked off one by one before they even realize they're in a horror movie. I mean, those types of films can work as well. That's basically every single Friday the 13th movie, and I love that franchise. But this is a film where everybody gets a fair chance. The characters have to band together and figure out how they're going to get out of this situation. It's a bottleneck scenario where they have to kind of run the scenarios through their heads as to what they should do. Do they charge down the train line trying to get to a train station? Do they stay and just try and hold up until morning and hope somebody discovers them? Do they stay together as a group, or do they send some fast runners out there? Do they barricade themselves in the toilets? Can the werewolves get into the train? Is the train itself going to be safe? So they have to puzzle all this out, and while they're doing that, you yourself as the viewer are trying to do that, because it's such a unique situation that, well, I've certainly never seen a film with this type of setup. You know, a train dead on the line with thick woodland either side, and there's werewolves there. It's a really great setup, and the atmosphere, I cannot even say how great the atmosphere is in this film. It just feels chilling as hell once we realize these characters are trapped on this dead train. Sometimes when I'm watching a film that I've not previously heard of, I do worry that the reason why I've not heard of it might be because the budget's really low, and there's going to be several times during the film where the lack of money becomes painfully obvious and I'm taken out of the story mentally. That didn't happen with Howl. I have seen British films with far lower budgets than this. Clearly there was some money to throw around. The makeup effects on the werewolves are really good. I think there's some practical work gone in here, perhaps with a little bit of CGI brush up. In the second half of the film, the werewolves are front and centre quite a lot, actually. I think the makers were quite proud of their work, and why not? The only time in this that I thought there might have been a lack of budget is in the third act. I think they could have gone with a change of location just to spice things up. Maybe have some of the surviving characters get to a train station either on foot or by getting the train started again, and there could have been a few last scuffles in the deserted train station late at night, but they didn't do that or couldn't do that. And so for the entire movie, basically, we're on this one bit of track with the train and the woods. That's all we really use. But there are some really good scenes that are quite action heavy, which took me by surprise that they were there. You know, stuff to do with fire, stuff where there are several humans and werewolves fighting at the same time using some quite complicated looking choreography. So I was quite impressed. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There are quite a few recognisable actors in this who would be known internationally, I think. So Shauna McDonald's in it. She was in The Descent many years ago, very famous horror film. I've not seen her in anything since then. I think she would have been sort of mid-20s when she did The Descent. In Howl, she's sort of mid-30s now. She's moved on a little bit with her life. She's playing a woman in this who starts the film really cold and distant from the other passengers because I guess she's sort of conditioned herself to be like that through years of isolated train travel. But as the film goes on, she starts to come out of herself and become warmer to everybody else. And then we've got Sean Pertwee, who's probably best known as Alfred in Gotham, the TV show, but I'm pretty sure he's been in a fair few films as well. He plays the train driver. And for people who were in the UK, there are some actors in the film who have been in various soaps at one time or another. I recognised somebody from Hollyoaks. I recognised somebody from Emmerdale. This film had me jumping on Wiki to kind of see who it was I was looking at. You know, even the people I didn't recognise, though, play very good roles. There are a number of good characters in Howl. The main guy, who's the train conductor, we really feel for him straight away in this film because he's a down on his luck guy who can't get off the bottom rung of the train company despite how hard he tries. He's missed out on a promotion just before this journey goes into effect, and he can't quite impress the girl of his dreams enough who also happens to work for the train company. So he feels like a loser, and yet once the shit hits the fan in this film, he really proves himself every bit the man. You know, he does all the right things. He's really heroic. There's another guy who's got it all, seemingly. He's got a wife back home. He's got a nice job in the city. And yet he's just a total arsehole who hinders rather than helps. And you get the impression as the film goes on that he could potentially be a big problem if he's not sort of reined in. You know, he's the group's one arsehole you've got to sort of keep your eye on. There's this other kid who really impressed me with his character art because he starts the film really quiet and you think to yourself, well, he's just going to be one of the ones who's killed off quite early, but he grows into the film. And when there comes a point where the group start to think about trying to fix the train to get it moving again and they're potentially going to get out of Dodge that way, this kid is instrumental in sort of getting under the train and fixing various things. And irony of ironies, he's just recently been turned down for an apprenticeship because he doesn't quite have the right type of certificate, even though actually he's brilliant at engineering and stuff. It's a typical British story, that. But I love the characters. There's even a comedy sort of character, this like little fat kid who I'm guessing he's just on his way home from a football match because he's got a football shirt on and he's had a really big kebab and he keeps having to go to the toilet every 5 minutes. He was quite funny for a while, but it's a great group. I think there's like 11 or 12 of them. There's a lot of characters, and yet the film does a very good job of letting us get to know them. Now for my negatives, and I have two that I want to talk about. The first concerns the ending. I was talking earlier about how I personally would have done something differently with the third act. I would have changed the location. Well, that's not actually the problem that I'm about to talk about. The problem I do have with the ending is the fact that there's one particular character who gets killed off quite late in the day. I'm not going to say who it is, I don't want to spoil the film for anybody, but I didn't quite agree with that. I think once that character had made it to that point, they shouldn't have been killed off, but opinions may differ. My other negative, though, is an even bigger issue with the film. You know, when you're watching a werewolf film or a zombie film or a vampire film and somebody gets bitten and you know that that character is dead meat, eventually they are going to turn into whatever the creature is for the film. And yet, the other characters refuse to kill that character because they can't quite bring themselves to, because it's their friend or their girlfriend or whatever. Well, we get that situation in this film. It always annoys me when this happens. And what makes this particular instance worse is that when this woman eventually does turn into a werewolf, her husband still won't kill her, even at that point. He's like, get away from her, leave her alone. I'm like thinking, you twerp, you imbecile, you're going to get everybody killed. On the whole, though, this is still an excellent film. Like I said at the top end of the review, I'd not intended to cover this one. And to be honest, I've got that many ongoing franchises I'm doing reviews for at the moment that I could have done without dropping this one-off standalone film into that mix, actually, at the moment. But I just had to talk about this film because it's really, really good, really impressed with it. And the best compliment I could probably give it is the fact that I would say, as of right now, this is my favourite werewolf film of all time. Now, I will add to that I've not seen that many werewolf films. I saw a Hammer film not so long ago, Curse of the Werewolf, which was very good. I saw The Howling once upon a time, which I vaguely remember being quite good, but I can't remember the details of it. And honestly, I can't think of any other werewolf films that I've seen that are really, really good. I'll probably think of one tomorrow that's brilliant and feel like a real idiot. But right now, as of this second, Howl is officially my favourite werewolf film of all time. So let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 bloody axes out of 5. So after that big build-up, I only give the film 3.5 out of 5. That's still a very, very good score, though, for what I think is quite a low-budget film compared to some of the really big Hollywood efforts. And let me tell you, I was literally a smidgen off giving this 4 out of 5. I think probably my uncertainty over the ending to the film probably just curtailed this film's chances of getting into that really excellent score zone. So just 3.5 out of 5, but like I said, that's still really, really good. I'm fully intending on buying this film and putting it on my shelf and watching it again in the future. I don't think we'll see a sequel. I think it will remain a one-off. This film came out in 2015. There's been no sequel since. I guess there could be, some more humans could go back to the same woods. Maybe there could be campers who stop by there or something, but I don't think we'll see it. I think this is just going to be one of those cool one-off affairs. Right, I'll be back very, very soon with another review. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.